We facilitate teaching and learning in all disciplines and courses, transforming Africa's education. AAU, the hub of excellence, shaping Africa's educational thoughts. AAU, swing of talents, web of passion, amazing is a promoting innovation, according community, equity, and standards, transforming Africa's education. We establish virtues and fast motion, we research vision, unity and truth, we facilitate teaching and learning in all disciplines and courses, transforming Africa's education. AAU, the pillar of higher learning, spearheading Africa's development. AAU, one of friendship, noble fellowship, partnership for higher education. Africa's intellectual advancement are focused to achieve African goals. We establish virtues and fast motion, we research vision, unity and truth, we facilitate teaching and learning in all disciplines and courses, transforming Africa's education.
Welcome you all to our third day of African University Week celebration and warm greetings from East African office. Actually, today, this is East African seminars. As you see, or as you had been seen from the program, that we have four participants representing all key players for education, university, private sector, organizations, and collaborators. So I'm happy to be here today and welcome from East African Regional Office in Khartoum, Sudan. The general theme of our seminar is building technology-based resilient university, as it was mentioned by African University. Please, those who are unmute your microphone. There is something, please, oh, thank you very much. The general theme of our seminar is to build technology-based resilient university, and this is a general theme of the East African or African University Week celebrations. In general, being well prepared for major threats require capable structural policy plans and people as well as function which oversee and closely collaborate along the entire value chain of educational system. Increase interest in risk and resilience born out of crisis. COVID-19 has been stress test for risk preparedness and sufficient capacity across different sectors. Unexpected events which have happened that affect and deteriorated our educational system need to be mitigated, and we need to be ready for any unsudden things. In general, or as a general introduction, on 11 March 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, and everyone was advised to avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms. Therefore, universities across the globe have to shut down. As of the 1st April 2020, in more than 80 countries around the world, more than 3.4 billion people, representing 43% of the world population, are in lockdown. Higher education has been disrupted as never before. But the fact that campuses are physically closed does not mean the higher education institution have stopped functioning. On the contrary, faced with multiple changes, they have had to respond quickly and find new solutions to previously unknown problems and new ways in which to continue teaching, conducting research, and serving community. Of April 6, April 2020, university and other tertiary education institutions are closed in 170 countries and communities, and over 220 million post-secondary students, which represent 13% of the total number of students affected globally, have already had their studies ended or significantly disrupted due to COVID-19. What we are seeing globally is impact in every region, a notable pronounced effect on upper and lower middle income countries. As a result of COVID-19 pandemic, East African universities have been forced to transit from face-to-face to online learning. Most online learning approach do not have comparable evidence-based foundations or focus. It's just focusing on the socio-emotional skills delivered via traditional campus-based learning. Generally, COVID-19 is creating a big crisis for higher education in East Africa. The implications include challenges to internationalization of higher education, financial challenges, and others. Students and academic institutions in East African countries will be specifically affected. Right to education and ICT during COVID. As everybody knows, we are in Africa, we signing and agree upon international organization declarations and sound which ask about the continuation of equality of education for all. So the current COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 had put the world education system in check after the almost universal school closure, and different alternative methodology were applied, considering that we need to contribute towards the achievement of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal 4 of the United Nations, which seek to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to highlight or to throw few and some lights on the situation in East Africa. In East Africa, no sweet home for quarantine university around the world seem to be responding to the COVID-19 crisis in the same way. That means, according to the different ecosystem and culture of East African region and community, each individual university, country, and regions have its specific thoughts and thinking about how to mitigate and overcome the problems. Also, there are different measures implemented as emergency educational alternative for students in response to new situations. Drastic measures have been taken to protect students and help them continue their programs remotely during the pandemic. At the beginning of the epidemics, higher education institutions in East Africa not yet affected had international students or their campus who were citizens of affected countries or has their own students on exchange at higher education in affected countries. With the position of traveling restriction, international students deciding to interpret their stay, either managing to return to their home country or found themselves forced to remain in their host country. Higher education institutions adopted different solutions to these situations, such as working with government to ensure the repatriation of students and providing additional support to international students held up in the host country. Some country in East Africa is also implemented a new competent-based curriculum and has looked to partners with companies that can assist with the creations of e-content and introducing technology in the classroom. Realizing the full potential of e-learning, yet lecturer still want students to submit assignment tasks and engage with course active in modern learning management system, with university using face-to-face learning becoming vulnerable to COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges which result in shutdown on university sites. Alternative need to be thought to allow students to realize e-learnings. As a general conceptualizations learning in a digital age in East Africa, have many points need to be considered. In general, we have different thoughts and thinking about the use of the technology in East African University. Some experts declare that e-learning is capable of making course content available online because of widespread use of modern technology such as hardware resources and software resources. This suggests that students have freedom to access courses, information, content anytime and anywhere. Some people and educational experts argue that face-to-face learning is irreplaceable and it is cornerstone of early learning institutions, even if the current discourses and technologies resolve the main uses of e-learning. Others believe that there is still a contrast between face-to-face and e-learning. Others believe that blended learning, which combined online and face-to-face learning, is the way to go, so that students can use many ways of assessing courses content based on their needs. Some experts say that social media site users can help because they produce and consume information on the integration of social media sites into learning, reveals that both Twitter and Facebook are the most used social media site in higher education, comparing to Instagram and others. In addition, social media sites content is easier accessible because it is compatible with both computer and mobile device, and this makes life easier for students. This is the most important issues if we're talking about the uses of the technology and visibility of application of technology in different East African contexts. Meet the local needs of disadvantaged students is beneficial to realize e-learning, while there may be many challenges that can hinder students from realizing the full potential of e-learning. Alternative pathways like the provision of free data bundles, free physical resources, and online resources can be used. I think collaboration with government, business, and non-governmental organizations is vital to ensure that no student is left behind, because all we talk about the equity and accessibility of education to all. Other persons and educational experts say that university can provide students with free laptop and Wi-Fi. Assess inside the university and resident little or no research had been done in this issue. And I think this depends on the socio-economical status of individual country in East Africa and also the financial resources of different universities and institutions. Some experts in East Africa supporting the diffusion of teaching or learning process via television or radio, which was an exciting innovation for us in school in the past. In many remote areas, actually in Africa and in some African countries from the past, they're applying the uses of community radio as a means of educational among different communities. So some experts raise these points and they thought or they think that television and radio can help us to do that. There is a study and estimate conducted by UNICEF about the uses of radio and TV as a means of education and country choice of digital learning technology seem to be influenced by its income group. For example, the estimate showed that low-income country, 80% apply radio instruction at much higher rate than lower middle-income country, which represent 56%. And middle-income countries is less than that. By contrast, internet and television instruction are much less common in low-income country, while these methods are applied much more widely in lower and middle-income country and early middle-income countries. That means each country depends on socio-economical status of the country, and the economics and finance of the university can select the suitable means and methodology of applying e-learning or digital or transforming of the education according to new era or new accident of the beds. If we talk about different methods, starting from a very simple methodology up to the sophisticated technology, normally we need to talk about how can we mitigate and resilience, because the continuation, accessibility, and affordability of education through specific selected technology is the most important issues. Are East African ready for digital transformation in education? We need to mention specific points which can reflect these issues. The first one, teachers feel obliged to cope with this completely new modality of distant teaching learning for which they have not had any training. Most of East African university teachers have no capacity to transfer their activities to digitally or to shift to digital transformations. Because in the past, as all body knows, most of East African university practicing routine educational methodology and system. The other issue, students without access or the resources to afford the technology, and those with learning challenges and others with disability being left behind. Students who rely on their institution for housing, food, healthcare, and community find themselves unprotected and uncertain about their options. Students who work on campus or receive scholarship as their main income are forced with a crisis of earning. Institutions with mission to teach those most likely to fall out of the educational pipelines are being left behind. Few institutions in East Africa, including the wealthiest and most representative university, had emerging plans. COVID-19 is creating a broadband crisis for higher education globally and East Africa. The implications include challenges to internationalization of higher education, a key global element in recent decades, financial change, and others. Student and academic institutions in low-income countries and in less influent part of the nation will be specifically affected. Students will need capacity building on the use of learning management system and other newly adopted online learning software. It is also imperative that university-wide teaching and learning methodology, international e-learning policy consider the potential benefit and challenges when encouraging the use of e-learning. We, in East Africa, we need to focus their effort on the most vulnerable students. They must ensure that teaching and learning solutions, technology setup, infrastructure investment, and funding modality as greater towards keeping these students engaged and connected and support their learning process and outcome. As a conclusion, the discussion and exchange of views between educational professionals and authorized persons, or discussion between different key players about the role that need technology can be, should, and play in the so-called new normal has played a central part. Various initiatives and action can be implemented through educational associations like the Association of African University in order to promote global cooperation and support higher education institutions. Collaboration with government, business, and non-governmental organizations is vital to ensure that no student is left behind. This unprecedented crisis indicated that in such difficult times, sharing resources is the only way for the global higher education community to rise to the challenges and proudly claim its fundamental role in the society. And I think we have many things to do regarding the uses of the technology or digital transformation to make sure that all students in our regions and in our Africa gain from it and use the technology for teaching and learning, and no one must be left behind. Thank you very much. This is general an introduction and overview about what's happening in East African University since the COVID pandemic arises in the world. So I think this workshop and the discussion in this workshop and the presentation will highlight on the importance of shareholders. Higher education alone cannot solve the problems. So all the key players must work together in order to find solution to our educational problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Faiza, for that insightful presentation. I think we've all enjoyed your presentation so much because it's very rich and it has covered several areas. You made mention of the different measures that are being implemented by the various regions, even in East Africa. You also highlighted the need for all stakeholders to work closely with governments, with industry players, with non-governmental organizations, so that we all try and push this digital transformation agenda. You also highlighted that there's the need for us to ensure that no one is left behind and that we all move together in this process. You also made mention of some expert thoughts regarding the need for us to consider the ease of access to information and content, the use of social media sites. You also made reference to some case studies related to television, use of television and radio, among several others. But I think the main key takeaway is that we need to work together, and this is not a task only for the higher education sector to pursue, but it's for all stakeholders to join in this transformation agenda. I think on that note, we want to appreciate you for your remarks and for setting the tone for us to start our discussion. On the program, we are supposed to have a presentation on technology-based teaching on Somalia, a general overview. But I think we don't see Dr. Ismail connected yet, same as the next presentation. So we'll go to, okay, so that the presentation, the third person I think is connected, and this is Dr. Paul Ebenezer. He is the Executive Director of Better Future for Generations and Education Consultant, and he's in Rwanda, and his presentation is titled Online Learning Issues and Opportunities During and After COVID-19. So if Dr. Paul Ebenezer is connected, please have the floor. You can start by introducing yourself and then continue with your presentation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor for this wonderful day. As I mentioned, my name is Paul Ebenezer from Rwanda. I'm an education consultant, and as you can see, today we are just celebrating the African University Day under the theme of building a technology-based resilience universities now. Just to go to the presentation, COVID-19 pandemic has already a dramatic change in all macroeconomics projection. As you know, in January 2020, IMF projection globally growth at 3.3%, following the 2.9% growing the 2019, which was recorded as the lowest growth in the last 10 years. You understand that the COVID-19 has caused a tragedy in economy, in the African economies, and especially in the higher education languages and institutions. COVID-19 crisis raised a significant concern for the entire education community, policymakers, educators, parents, and of course learners. School and universities closures around the world have disrupted the learning and the lives of a generation of students. Community learning centers also have had the closure, the doors disrupting access to some of the most disadvantaged and the marginalized learners. COVID-19 issues in higher learning institutions are responsible for the fast track development program and the innovation program that can help learners to find out solutions in education and the well-being for citizens. This unprecedented crisis has severely affected the learning efforts to maintain education provision through distance, and the online teaching is now a priority for well information sharing. As we responded to the emergence and the start for recovery from the socio-economic shocks, we must work together to ensure that the recovery will focus on building inclusive and sustainable economies that are more resilient in facing pandemic, climate change, and many other global challenges. Let me mention some higher learning institutions challenge that had in this COVID-19. There is economic and the financial crisis. It was also extremely high health and severe risks. Stay home and work home, even learning home, it was very easy for this pandemic, and it has also affected the supply chain, or almost the collapsed operations, and almost stopped disruption and uncertainties and tough decision making. Building technology resilient. Here you can define a resilient from the Latin language as rebound, recoil, or spring back. It is a general concept that can be defined broadly as the capacity for dynamic system to withstand of recovery from a significant challenge that threaten its stability, viability, development. Here we can have some like keyword and recommendation that the higher learning institution that should be follow and work on. There should be improved student experience, may be like a digital recruitment student through effective use of social medias, crowd hosting student information management system that are accessible via the mobile phones, flexible digital driven learning option, and engaging faculty for cover programs and branded models, use of analytics to mentor and evaluate students' progress, use of digital badge and certificates to boost career opportunities. I think these are some of opportunities and the way forward that the higher learning institution should be followed to just to set the recovery, as most of the African countries and the education system still in vaccination of COVID-19. But we think that the COVID should it exists now, and we should just focus on how we can improve the e-learning and technologies. Some African universities have gone back to face-to-face. I think some of countries have already opened the schools, face-to-face meeting the schools, and others are substituting from the face-to-face to delivery the use of PowerPoint presentation via Zoom and the other platforms. African universities need to support to address the inequalities and thinking the strategy, the sources that are required to support the adaptation and the challenging divide toward resilient questions. The African University Day 2021 that we are celebrating today as the East African and Northern Region Office will provide the right of platform for the liberation of these questions and the form of key part of the discussion point. We will focus also to advocate for support the required and the universities step to closer toward digital transformation and sustainable implementation of technology projects. Some of the recommendations that we can have on this wonderful day is that the research studies in the area of digital transformation in Africa, universities should be online learning, academic mobilities during the pandemic situation. We should also think of developing and sharing the generic plan and policies to digitizing the teaching and learning activities such as plan and policies could be customized by African university form. Thirdly, we should just think of facilitating online training for the individual universities to support their faculty and students to be successful in online teaching and learning. And we should focus on the collaboration, like building the partnership between the universities and the government and even other partners, and leveraging the mandate for voice for AAU in Africa higher education to lobby and support African university to work with their national researchers. And we should be also lobbying with the African leadership, like chancellors and the other commitment regarding the institutional budgeting and sustain their cost of connectivities and the e-resources. We should also think about the establishing for African e-learning expert group that can be mobilized to assist any African university that require remote support and the areas of e-learning. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I think my presentation ends here, and maybe we can back to the question when it is be necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Habeniza, for your presentation. I think at this point, we would like to give opportunity to some participants if they want to engage with him, or if there are some specific questions that you want to ask. You may please put your questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and then we can give you the permissions to speak. Otherwise, we can also take the questions at the end of all the presentations. So maybe at this point, we would like to call the next presenter. That's in the person of Dr. Mohamed Salah Mohamed Ali, and he is a software engineer. He's the founder and the general manager of Infopedia iTech. And his presentation is on the topic, Enablers and Constraints of ICT Use in Education in East Africa.
Thank you for having me today. I will start sharing my screen with you, the presentation. I will try to make it very short. Just give me a second to adjust myself. My name is Mohamed Salah. I'm a software engineer and try to concentrate on the e-learning technologies and I said the emergence of COVID-19 forced us to find ways to continue with the schools and universities and so on. So I will talk about enablers and concentrates of ICT use in education in Africa. I said the e-learning is an emerging concept in education. Before COVID-19, it was like more of, we took it like in the relaxed days. Most of the universities, they took it as the relaxed base because it was, allowed to say the luxury of universities or educational institutes. But the COVID-19 forced us to solve the problems of educational people staying at home and so on. Okay, and so people started to use the different technologies and applications to deliver the learning material. I said e-learning is the emerging concept which enables educational institutes to use technology, especially the internet, to deliver education content to students. In this presentation, I will discuss some of the challenges. One of them I face it right now is, we have very limited access to internet in Sudan right now. So I try to do my best to develop this presentation. The first challenge is the physical infrastructure. As you know, we need the infrastructure, especially or in two aspects: the power supply, the electricity, and the connectivity to the internet. Um, as we all know, as we face it in our country here, we have different problems with having a sustainable electricity supply. You know, this will limit us or to enforce us to adjust our times, when to get to the internet and how to use it, how to use the technology. This challenge of this lack of power supply or enough power supply is due to the limited or lack of financial funds and the prices, the high prices of the electricity compared to the rest of the world. Okay? Second challenge of the infrastructure, the connectivity to the internet. Telecom infrastructures are not covering the need of African people and businesses. We don't have enough coverage and supply for the internet connectivity. So this will limit us by nature that we cannot enjoy these technologies and like e-learning and the such. Okay? The second one is the affordability of the technology. Um, I said we have limited financial resources, or in sometimes not well managed financial resources with, to develop these technologies. Sometimes countries they have more resources, but they're not focused in developing these technologies for the education. So this is a challenge for us. So most of the time, the schools cannot afford, or the universities cannot afford the cost of having the software and hardware to develop such infrastructure for educational systems. Okay? Um, and hence, most of the schools, especially the schools, maybe the universities, they have better situation because they have more resources. But the schools, they have very limited resources to buy the expensive computers and hardware. And this will limit us to enjoy this technology as well. And moreover, the providing the training for the staff, we have lack of skills. This I will talk about it in the slides. Okay. The misconception of the e-learning. Through the last 2 years, I have noticed, as somebody is working in the technology, that the people they have very huge misconception of the e-learning. They due to the pandemic in the last 2 years, since end of 2019 up to recently, we have very limited access to schools, physical school and physical teaching and learning. So we needed to develop some urgent plan and some urgent ways to deliver the teaching, the learning material, and to continue having this teaching process with the students, so that we cannot afford to lose 2 years, almost 3 years of the, of the, the student's life without learning. So people hurry to the e-learning as a concept. But the misconception was that people relied on using the video conferencing application like Zoom, and we use it right now, MS Teams and other methodologies that rely on video conferencing. Video conferencing is not e-learning. When I discuss this with most of people of schools here, they're talking to me and we discuss it out. They try to convince me that video conferencing is e-learning. It can be part of e-learning, like for face-to-face engagement between students and teachers. It is not an e-learning as a concept. This led us to a huge misconception of the e-learning idea because the use methods are set to solve an urgent matter of teaching between students. But in sometimes we had very bad experience. I noticed them with my kids because it was for them sometimes boring because, I mean, video conferencing like Zoom application, for instance, it is by nature is an application for businesses, for video conferencing between businesses. So we need to develop a real understanding of the e-learning. E-learning is not school because it just covers one aspect of the school, which is learning. The school, it is culture, is an environment where the students will have different experiences to, that support, that help to build their skills and skills on how to manage their lives. But e-learning as a concept is just covering the learning aspect. So we need really to go back and to think really and understand what is e-learning, what is the target of e-learning. Okay? So we can really to develop it and optimize it as needed. Okay. The last one is lack of skills. Sorry. As said, e-learning is an emerging concept, and as a result, it is still in need to have more training for human capacities to develop the different parts of the e-learning. These parts are two different, two main parts, as I present them here. One part is the technical aspect of it, which is concerned with developing the e-learning portals and deploying them into the internet in proper and easy way. The second one is the content creation. This one can be very challenging for the most of the schools and their staff. It needs experience in using the internet, developing general content, and finally developing learning content to an e-learning an e-learning portal of or LMS. By nature, the technology is not easy. The content creation is not easy. So we really need to have good training for these people in this aspect. Talk about teachers and lecturers in schools and universities. They really need to have good training in this technology and how to develop the content and how to use this technology, deliver the best experience or teaching and learning experience to the students. Okay. The second part of the technical skills of the skills we need is the soft skills, which is first one is teaching skills extended with technical aspect. As said, we need teachers with technical background, technical knowledge with technical experience. So we really need to take these teachers and put them in training for how to use this technology and utilize them, deliver better teaching experiences and learning experience to the students. Because lastly, teaching using technologies is not like teaching traditional methods. It's two different things. Okay? Human interaction is always the best, but okay, the emergency will force us to have new methods of teaching and learning, but we need to learn how to utilize it the best way. So it's not just to solve the problem of the pandemic, but after that. I always talk about after the pandemic, the COVID-19, after we go back to the schools. Shall we throw away the portals, the e-learning system we developed? This is a question we need to discuss, to discuss and see how to utilize this system with this huge and great content. The second part of the soft skills, the experience in managing the learning process and how to make it easy and enjoyable to all parties, the teachers, students, and parents. Literally, I have seen in the last 2 years that teachers start a session of teaching 7:30 to 1:30, like reading, excuse me for the words, like they're reading and use. Like when I saw them when I monitor them with my kids in the screen, I saw them like somebody, the news. As they're reading and using the TV. So it's really boring for them. So really we need to learn how to manage the learning process and make it easy and enjoyable for all parties. And thank God that the technologies give us the flexibility and how to develop these such a content and colorful and easy and gamified ways At the end of the day, we want our kids, students, in schools and universities to learn and to gain these skills to manage their lives and to get jobs and create businesses. This is the main target of the learning. And through these such sessions and events, we try to develop the ideas and how to develop the LMS and create better understanding of the e-learning and how to develop it and how to develop better systems that can help us to deliver the learning to the students and the training to all different parties. Thank you for your attention, for having me, and this is the end of the session. I hope it was good enough for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think there was a lot of background noise, and so we lost you at some points, but it's okay. I think you can share your presentations with us so that we also share it with all those who registered so that they can follow it up. Maybe you can reposition yourself as we start the engagement session so that if there are questions that people would be asking the presenters, we can follow. So maybe you can take advantage of this time to reposition yourself a little bit. But otherwise, thank you very much for your presentation, and we look forward to obtaining the PPT so that we can share it with all the participants. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Salah. So we'll move on straight to take our fifth presentation. No, this will be our fourth presentation, and it's to be delivered by Prof. Vani Naidu of the School of Management, Information Technology and Governance at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And her presentation is titled Digitization of African Universities, Fostering Collaboration so that Challenges can be Overcome. Thank you very much, Prof. You have the hosting right, so you can please unmute yourself and begin your presentation. And maybe you can kindly put your presentation on slideshow, so that we get a full view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good morning to everyone. Today, I'm Professor Vani Naidu from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, as the host has indicated. Today, I'm going to look at digitalization of African universities, fostering collaboration so that challenges can be overcome. In keeping with the relevance and importance of Africa Week collaborations, I'd like to kickstart the discussion by saying that in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic that appeared suddenly on the African continent, I'd like to salute Africa. In keeping with the relevance and importance of Africa Week celebrations, I'd like to kickstart the discussion by saying that in light of the COVID-19 pandemic that appeared suddenly on the African continent, I would like to salute Africa and its higher education academics, experts, and stakeholders for bravely adapting to online virtual teaching platforms at such an accelerated pace. In spite of critics and Africa always being labeled as lagging behind in technology with our universities, African universities have worked hard in 2020 and into 2021 and adapted their teaching where possible to online virtual classroom modes. This paper will highlight the following key themes: COVID and the need to create new online learning platforms for universities teaching and learning. Then we'd look at South African perspective and how they have migrated to an online learning platform. I will use the example of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which is one of the leading universities in South Africa. The next theme will be challenges faced by staff and students in the use of new virtual classrooms. And I would propose a way forward in overcoming these challenges. And lastly, but most important, we'll look at fostering collaboration between universities from different countries to learn from their experiences. To keep abreast of the World Health Organization that COVID-19 was a deadly virus that needed social distancing to curb the spread of the virus, universities in Africa, mandated by government, very quickly took up the challenge and transformed at a very accelerated pace their universities from traditional classrooms to virtual classroom mode. This was not an easy task, and many teething problems popped up, as it is understandable when anything new is developed and implemented. However, over the months and year, great inroads have been made with African universities as they recreated their university offerings and curriculum and went onto virtual platforms. The accelerated pace of moving from the traditional to the virtual classroom was a very stressful time for all academics, students, and other stakeholders in higher education. South African universities transformed quite nicely onto virtual platforms. This could be due to South Africa being one of the countries in Africa that has a very well-developed infrastructure in place. Kavis and Zabadi argue that in trying to move from the traditional paper and pen environment that is face-to-face, learning management systems, that is the web-based learning environment to disseminate content, is one of the most highly adopted and used online environments in higher education institutions for e-learning. This includes open source software learning management systems, which is free of charge, where the source code can be changed, such as Moodle, OpenEdX, and Chamelo, and cloud-based learning management systems with a startup cost and source code that cannot be changed, such as .learn, Canvas, and others. Selvin further argued that dichotomous aspect of digital divide clearly reveals the students that either have access or do not have access to technological resources. And this influences the status of connectiveness, either connected or not connected learners. As such, Van Diersen and Van Dijk assert that the digital divide is one of the biggest limitations on the use of educational technology globally. Due to quarantine and lockdown restrictions, African universities very effectively opted to move to a virtual online platform of teaching and learning. The research of Boskert et al. Is one of the early studies reporting the impact of the interruption of education due to COVID-19 pandemic in 31 countries. In addition to the assessment of each case by country, the study highlighted major themes that have commonly arisen in countries from the interruption of education during COVID-19 pandemic, such as 1, the inequity and the digital divide, which has been aggravated during the pandemic. 2, the need for alternate assessment and evaluation methods, and the need to switch to formative assessments through synchronous and asynchronous means. 3, the use of online proctoring service as a way to control for cheating and academic dishonesty. Carey indicates that there was an overnight shift of normal classrooms into e-learning classrooms. That is, educators have shifted their entire pedagogical approach to tackle new market conditions and adapt to the changing situation of uncertainty brought on by COVID-19. During this tough time, the concern is not about whether online learning methods can provide quality education. It is rather how academic institutions will be able to adopt online learning in such a fast, massive manner. Governments and educational institutions look at e-learning as one option that can be exploited to achieve the important millennial goal, which in Africa is also the same, that is, education for all. Ahmed highlights that the rapid development and widespread of internet and communication technologies have materially altered many characteristics and concepts of the learning environment. He states that nowadays, the traditional teaching in university classrooms becomes no longer sufficient for our students. Furthermore, e-learning emerged as an imperative paradigm of modern education that is unrestricted by space, time, or place, offering new possibilities to our education institutions for providing flexible and cost-effective remote or distance learning environments. However, e-learning in Africa has come with both various benefits and challenges. We'll now look at the example of South African perspective and how they have migrated to an online learning platform. And the example is the University of KwaZulu-Natal. The university has 5 sites, and one is situated nearly 40 kilometers away from Durban, which is in Pietermaritzburg, that has, all schools and colleges, whereas in Durban, we have the medical college, that is one, the education college, another, and we have the Howard College, which is for law and for engineering, and then the management sciences and the pure sciences, which is in the Westville campus. So just to give you a basic structure of how big the institution is. So South Africa has had one of the most dangerous strains of COVID-19. Last year, 2019, universities in South Africa took a decision with the Department of Education that was backed by government to have online learning, as we had many lockdowns imposed. This was a strategy to keep all people who lived in our country safe, as the virus started increasing at a very high rate, putting undue pressure on our healthcare systems. Despite vaccinations being rolled out at a very accelerated pace in South Africa in 2021, there has still been an increase in COVID deaths and the virus rate increase. UKZN is one of the top leading research and teaching universities in South Africa. Due to COVID-19, UKZN migrated to online or distance platforms. According to UKZN's 2021 report, the UKZN Teach Online Strategy, or UTOS, is designed to assist academics adopt a technology-enhanced teaching and learning culture now and for the future. We estimated that over 350 million was spent in implementing, having this online system in place for the university. So there was a lot of initial costs involved. So even post-COVID, the ideal out there is that we still continue on an online or blended system or mode of transfer. So we keep virtual there as well. So you said UKZN academics use the Moodle platform to communicate with their students online. Notes, audio lectures, videos, and notices about the Zoom or Microsoft Teams lectures are placed on the Moodle site. Students have to attend lectures via Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Assessments are uploaded on the Moodle system, and students have to upload their completed assessments online, and these are graded by the lecturer, and marks are input. The lecturer also has to input marks on spreadsheets, and this is sent to the administrator, who then uploads it on our students' central system, where you get an SMS about your results. Rubrics and student assessments are sent to administrators who files these for auditing purposes, and also sends students feedback provided by the lecturer to students. At UKZN, all staff, both admin and academic, as well as students, had to undergo online training provided by the university to skill them with how to migrate to the new online platforms. we had to even the playing fields for everyone. So training was an essential ingredient in the implementation and continuity of this virtual platforms. The challenges faced by online learning during COVID-19 and the way forward. There were various challenges that, although I've placed it from a South African perspective, we can see these commonalities in many of the universities in Africa, as well as others in other parts of the world, in other continents. The first challenge was adaptability. Students were used to a traditional classroom setup and found it difficult to adapt to the new online mode when it first began. And I like to reiterate that change is often hard. There was a need to change mindset so that online learning becomes more approachable to both learners and lecturers. There were even staff who were very adamant and against online. But once training commenced and they had continued support, institutional support, this fostered a more inclusive online virtual learning environment for both staff and students. This is where training has been essential. Once again, both staff and students have had continuous training to adapt to the online learning platforms. As our Moodle sites change, as our various different sites change, there's continuous upgrading of training for staff and students so that we continue to understand the new rollout of the new technology at hand. So there was also another challenge was technical support. Students may not have had computers. Secondly, students may have not have had enough bandwidth. Another major challenge occurred was there was no proper infrastructure in certain areas, and this meant students could not connect online. UKZN allowed these students to come back to campus residence so that they had the necessary access to the online teaching and learning platform. The idea was that no student should be left behind. Another important thing, there was great geo-mapping being done by ICS staff as well as us, where we had to see whether students were connecting or not, if there were problems, so that they could be brought back. Arrangements had to be made to financially bring them back to university so that they could complete the year or the semesters. This was very, very important, once again, to reiterate that although we adapted to the new online learning sites, we did not leave any students behind. We also aggressively went out. We have donor organizations that we connected with so that we could get donations, and the businesses as well, local businesses, donor organizations abroad, etc. We had a very actively challenged UKZN branch that went out and got computers for students who didn't have them, so that these students could be connected during this time. COVID was a very stressful time. COVID is a very stressful time. However, we wanted to continue the aspect of continue teaching on this virtual platform. And I must commend my university and many other universities in South Africa who work so hard. Even to add to this, staff members, one of the ways where we get funding is from the Department of Higher Education. So I know myself included, as well as many other staff members, aggressively conducted a lot of research. We were involved with the research activities, publications, etc. So that when we sent off our publications, the Department of Higher Education in South Africa subsidized this and input hundreds of thousands of rands into our research funds. And this is where the university benefited, because this was used to buy more bandwidth for students, to get our university connected with MTN. We got some very good rates, etc. So we even, for accessing UKZN, certain things are free, and we allowed a certain, the service providers gave us certain discounts and promotions that would make it easier for us and more cost effective, especially for students. At the end of the day, we wanted to keep everyone safe because our death toll was very high in South Africa during COVID-19, and it still continues. To continue, students may not also know how to adapt the application is another challenge of the online module. This means that they had to notify the ICS team and Moodle support team that then provided students with the necessary training. To save costs, the training was recorded so that students could upload this training at any time and convenience so that they would know how to use the online system. Another challenge was staying motivated for staff and students. This was very difficult as it has not been easy since students and staff were faced with COVID-19 on a global scale, as well as close to home as the death toll increased daily in South Africa. It is necessary, I advocate that lecturers champion support from families and administrators. Students should also champion support from online classmates or online administrators, as well as the teachers. However, why I say administrators, sometimes students feel a bit of insecurity. So, it's easier to go through an administrator. Another challenge faced that students need to be trained in practicing proper etiquette online. We were asked to train students, as well as the notices were put up on our online systems where students shouldn't communicate with the teacher in caps, as it would be interpreted as screaming in emails. They had to be respectful at all times on online platforms. They needed to cultivate patience. Teachers sometimes have many modules and tasks at end to complete. So if a student sent an email and they got it back later, they should understand why this is so. Another important challenge was self-discipline. Students should manage their time efficiently and not leave assessments last minute. Students should also minimize distractions by having a space that has less noise and is well lit and ventilated. Students must be committed and adhere to the deadlines, especially for assessments. I found that one of the hardest things that students indicated in my classroom settings was that they felt alone. So in my personal capacity, I used to send announcements and posts to my students regularly in the different modules I teach. I asked them to visit their Moodle sites regularly, see chats, posts. I put videos, PowerPoints, etc., to keep them engaged and busy in the module. To make sure students do not feel isolated or alone in the teaching and learning process, I had Zoom lectures, and after my Zoom lectures, I also had discussions and consultations. This worked out quite well because students had a place, they still had that physical interaction with the lecturer. Students also were advised to contact me via email. This was done to make students feel less alone. It is important that students have a time schedule and take constructive breaks, especially on the online learning platforms. Another extremely important, I thought, point to raise here was personal well-being for staff members. COVID-19 has had an impact on staff well-being. The issue of academic wellness is very important to university leadership, as the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on academics worldwide. University leadership should do more to support academic staff who have faced challenges and major emotional hurdles during the pandemic. The new normal forced staff to live in a constant fear and anxiety as they watched their loved ones or family, colleagues, students, and friends pass away or get infected with the virus. The constant fear of not knowing when you could get infected or if you would survive this pandemic has led to academic staff enduring undue stress and anxiety that has had drastic impacts on their personal well-being. Symptoms that staff were prone to during the pandemic were burnout, anxiety, panic attacks, severe mood swings, manic depression, survivor guilt, and post-traumatic stress. University management and academic leadership should have in place the following programs to promote staff wellness. Emotional, professional, and life coaching should be in place at the university. New leave policies should be in place. There should be professional psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors available helplines to serve as mental health support for staff and students at universities. I must commend my university and many other universities in South Africa. We have a lot of online counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists who work tirelessly day and night with staff and students. Motivational speakers should be brought in by the university via webinars to speak on staff wellness issues. Online learning for staff should continue so that staff are kept updated. Training updated and trained on the new technology used by teaching and learning. The university should continue to communicate awareness about hygiene, health, and safety measures that should be followed during the pandemic. Another issue or challenge raised was student well-being. Students' well-being has been compromised by the intensity and the brutality of the pandemic. Universities in South Africa have excellent counseling support for students online. Universities provide the necessary hygiene and safety to students on campus. However, students must also commit to safety and hygiene. They must wash their hands regularly with soap or use the hand sanitizers outside their buildings. And they must at all times practice using their masks and practice social distancing. University campus control has reported students not listening to leadership, where they still have parties and large gatherings. They're also not using the mask, yet government has imposed a fine in South Africa for people who do not wear the mask in public. Young people at campus have to take the responsibility and be more vigilant when it comes to hygiene, safety, and their health. The need to uphold high levels of quality assurance in the various programs during COVID-19 was another challenge raised. Strong policies supporting online learning and strong policy and quality assurance for online should be in place within a university. Academics should design online assessments. University management must have transformative leadership and lead the debate and implementation for good quality assurance within a university. There should be training of staff and students on the use of new technology so that they understand and get accustomed to the online learning systems within a university. Staff have to undergo continuous online training as the systems in online is continuously changing. On-the-job training should be considered. Make sure that during COVID-19, students can access our library facilities, our accommodation services, etc. The disabled unit should also make sure that they engage with this segment of the student population, as they should not be left behind because the university has migrated to a virtual platform. Strong measures must be taken against students who are caught cheating on online assessments and referred to the necessary proctors. The last area we will look at, or the theme, before I conclude, is fostering collaboration between universities from different countries to learn from their experience. Previously resisted by African universities, the new technology has become more acceptable in the COVID-19 era as Africa too migrated on online teaching platforms. Both synchronous, live, or in real time, and asynchronous, recorded or self-paced e-learning strategies were implemented by African universities through learning management systems with their application such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Synchronous e-learning was offered in the form of interactive teaching and tutorials in small and large formats. Asynchronous e-learning included preparation of course materials for students in advance of students' access. Example, recorded lectures, supportive videos, external links for recommended websites, and additional resources such as electronic books. Online learning was underutilized in the past, especially in developing countries in Africa. However, the current crisis of COVID-19 pandemic forced the entire world to rely on it for education. In our education technology, it can be seen as a positive step towards evolution and change for mankind, especially during a crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic heralded. Many educationists have noticed that COVID-19 has tested the resilience of our education and its various structures and the various stakeholders. By fostering collaborations between different universities in different African regions has allowed us to discuss our challenges and wins. This type of dialogue on research platforms can only strengthen African universities as we can learn from each other by sharing knowledge on COVID-19 and the various technologies and the various challenges we face when migrating to online learning platforms. In conclusion, I would like to say, looking to developed countries is not always the answer, as Africa has its own unique political, economic, infrastructure, and poverty factors that makes our experiences different to the Western world. I strongly support collaborative research between universities in Africa, as we can solve our problems if we have platforms such as these to put our heads together and unite Africa in a way forward towards sustainable online African universities. By making African universities sustainable, we can develop and mentor the youth leadership that will drive programs that can support a sustainable African economy. Initiatives such as aggressive farming and agriculture, small business development, green economies, adapting to technology, building infrastructure to support growth and development, and sustaining the African continent is the way to go. The youth need to be guided to build and not burn and break and have a war mentality. We, the children of Africa, we know our land and we have seen its suffering and its glory. And we have to rethink and realign African priorities so that other developing nations do not steal or pilfer our resources. If we support one another, then definitely, without a doubt, Africa will flourish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. That has been an excellent presentation. And I'm just going through the comments. I can read that people are saying great presentation. They all agree that you've done excellently well. So we thank you so much for summing up the entire session for us. And we're supposed to take one more presentation, but we can't seem to see the person online. I'm just confirming whether he's online. Dr. Abdulgadir Sheikh Ismail, are you online? Can you confirm you are online? So thank you so much. Prof. Faiza, I don't know what you advise at this point. I had listed some questions that maybe we could have asked the panelists to respond to, But some way, somehow, I feel like Prof. Vani Naidu's presentation has responded to most of them. Like, for instance, we're going to be asking what we should be doing differently in our various institutions. What have we done so far which really didn't work, and what should we be doing differently going forward? I think her presentation touched on some of these, but if there were additional comments from any of the panelists, they should feel free to please respond to this question I'm asking. After that, I think Prof. Faiza can also come in and moderate a brief session with questions where we can engage the panelists to respond to 1 or 2 questions, and then we can give opportunity to those of us who are connected, the participants, so that they also ask some questions directly. Then Prof. Faiza will come in to wrap up the session and to give us her closing remarks. So before Prof. Faiza comes in, if any of you who presented would want to respond to this, but like I mentioned, I think most of these came up during the presentation by Prof. Niado, as well as by the other presenters. But in case there's any aspect that you want to add up or to top up what has been said already, what have we been doing which really didn't work so effectively, and what should we be doing differently going forward? I would like to hear that. Thank you. Okay, maybe at this point we should give opportunity to participants to ask any questions they may have. Please, you can put it in the chat box or you can raise your hand. Let me go through and see if any has come up. Professor, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there was a question that was posted by Pamela Nyakonya. And Pamela says that during COVID-19, I had a challenge in teaching statistics and quantitative techniques online. I think it's basically relates to how some technical topics or some topics which maybe require more practice can be taught via the online version, via the online modes. So if we can hear some feedback from any of the panelists, we would be glad to be guided in terms of responding to that question. For instance, medicine or civil engineering or things like that, which maybe requires, some level of practicality. How were these courses taught, or how did they manage the teaching of these courses via the online modes and during the peak of the COVID pandemic?
Well, the challenge was, it wasn't easy. For example, I teach strategy, entrepreneurial development, and project management. So I think in humanities, it was far more easier to adapt to the online as opposed to the medical fraternity, etc. However, just to tell you or just give you an example of what happened on our campuses. For example, on the laptops, the case studies were put for the students, the medical students. In mathematics, they also uploaded a lot of case studies or chalkboard, etc. During the Zoom session, they actually stood there, recorded the session where they stand there and they actually put out the, mathematical equation, etc. And, go around explaining the concept like you would do in the classroom. And this was an example, and it set well because students were catching on. They also did recordings so that they put it so that if students had a problem, they were not getting the actual equation. For the medical students, for example, we had we lost a lot of medical staff and students. So what happened at the university, since we have our staff practice medicine at the hospitals as well as and our students. So what we did with them was that they were giving first we had to protect them. They were giving online advice. They would look at people's conditions, whatever. Many doctors also opted for giving online or doing online consultations. As people started getting vaccinated, etc., and they were allowing, but there were still staff. We unfortunately lost a lot of good staff and students during the pandemic, but it still continued. I mean, they did really good. I must commend them, even if they're not here, may God rest their soul. But they tried heaven and earth to support, to be actively involved, not just online in the practical. I think it's also very different. For example, running a practical session in a chemistry lab, whereas the student is actually doing it, physically in the lab. However, they did allow practicals to continue at some of the institutions, but the way they allowed it was they were done in synchronized groups so that students could, have enough spaces in the labs. We had more tutors, etc., or demonstrators in, so that we could practice the social distancing, etc. I hope that has helped.
Yes, it's very useful. And I think we appreciate the fact that you've been able to share the situation in South Africa. Because like you mentioned, during the peak of the COVID, South Africa was actually recording very high figures in terms of those who were being affected by the disease. So which means you guys really fully had to utilize the electronic and online modes of learning. And so you probably had a better experience. And so we appreciate all the insights that you've been able to bring to the discussion. I see Dr. Prof. Faiza's hand is up. Maybe before I ask the next question, which has been posed by participants, she can go ahead and make her remarks. Over to you, Prof. Faiza.
Thank you very much. I would like to highlight on very important issues. All people nowadays are talking about the uses of a technology and educational transformation. I like to say that education is a system. It's not only a knowledge. We build the character. So the knowledge gradually must be translated to knowledge and into practice. So we don't want digital transformations to affect the scholarity achievement of our students. This is why we always saying that we need more research, assessment, and evaluations. Actually, for COVID-19 or any transmitted disease, we have precautions. We need to restructure our building, our setting, our school performance to not to direct ourselves only for digitalizations, because some subjects, statistics, medicine, and other subjects need face direct contact between the moderators, the teachers, and the students. So besides thinking about the digitalizations, we need to think about restructuring of our infrastructures as a university, and to find a way, as Professor Nidu said, that we can use a small group students for students learning or teaching, and we can find another way. So what I want to say is that we need to think in the different dimensions, because some subjects must be implemented face by face. Digital transformation is going side by side, but also we need to look in another way. This is why in Africa, we need more research and more assessment and evaluation to say where and how can we continue for COVID appear at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Professor Faiza. I don't know if any of the other presenters would want to add up, whether Dr. Mohamed Salah, Mohamed Ali, or whether Dr. Paul Habeneza would want to contribute to any aspects of the discussion so far, the discussion session. Okay, while they get ready to come, I think a comment came in from one of the participants trying to share what happened in their institution, which she says has worked. She said in most Ugandan universities, we have a challenge of internship placement to facilitate practicability. So in the G University Faculty of Business Administration and Management, decided to engage them on entrepreneurial projects, and this has really worked. And I think that's an important aspect that she's highlighting. And just like Prof. Faiza had also mentioned, that we need to look at the whole transformation agenda, as a complete process. We should look at it holistically in terms of what else can we do to make sure that the students are able to access the level of training that is required, so that by the time they come out, they really have that experience and are fit for purpose. So she is sharing that about how her contribution relates to how they give the opportunity for the students to engage in entrepreneurship. And she says it has really worked. I think we would love to read more of such similar situations or similar cases in your specific universities which have worked, so that we all learn it. I think that's the purpose of this platform, for us to learn from each other, so that we can go back to our own situation and see what we can implement and what we can do differently to change our situation. There's another one which says staff welfare is a very serious issue, especially for private universities. The issue of internet facility accessibility, reliability, speed, and data is still a challenge. And I think this is a challenge still in most other universities and in most other African countries. The issue of reliability, speed, and data, having access to internet. So what are some of the key measures that your universities have put in place? All of us connected, all of us, the participants, what measures have your universities put in place in terms of ensuring that accessibility to internet and connectivity, and just making sure that students are able to still continue with online modes of learning, so that everything is smooth? I think we'd love to learn from everyone here. Another comment just came in which says, at our university's Faculty of Education, we have a challenge of conducting teaching practice. Colleagues, please share. Okay, so I think we want to give the opportunity to all of us to speak up, to respond to some of these questions. If people can raise their hands, then I can give them the opportunity to speak, as well as to any of the facilitators, those who have presented. If you really want to share an idea about how your university handles some of these cases, I think we are all interested to learn. Yesterday, when Ms. Nodumo, who is the Director of ICT Communications and Knowledge Management here at the AAU, in her presentation, was talking about the need for all stakeholders to ensure that internet and access to online modes of learning really reach the last mile solution. And from what I heard, the last mile solution really relates to ensuring that not only those in the cities and are those who are able to access internet, but those far away in the rural areas. How are we ensuring that students who were connecting from those areas were also really able to follow the lectures? Or what modes were we using to reach some of these students? I think it will be exciting to hear some ideas of what happened in universities. Or if Prof. Faiza would want to come in. I think what we are trying to do is really to engage all of us to speak up, to use the rest of the time to share some ideas, some thoughts. So we are opening the floor for like the next 5 minutes. We want to hear contributions. So would like to really have all of us participating as much as possible, and as well as to the other presenters. Would love to hear from you as well. So over to you, maybe Prof. Faiza, you can share some thoughts.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank you, Felicia, for the moderations of these seminars. I'd like to thank the participants Actually, the selection of the participants coming around the all key players in the educational development in Africa and the partnership, private sector, organization, other friend organizations, and IT experts. So they can work together to solve and to think about the solution for our problem nowadays. As I said, education is a system and a setting, is not knowledge, as just a knowledge. We need to build capacity of future generations. So we need to think exactly what is the most important process which can we do in order to improve the scholarity assessment and to build the capacity of our students. Actually, I think AAU have a great role to play in these issues. We all appreciate the capacity building program, which implemented regularly by Association of African University, and many issues which have been implemented regularly had been raised here during the presentation. The issue of capacity building, university management, university development, and quality assurance system. What we need to infuse issues that had been get up from coronavirus or COVID-19 and its effect in the education, and to be infused in our training programs. I think we in Africa, we need more and more training with concentration in a specific issue which raised up in during COVID-19. The second thing which I need to highlight on the think tank. So we are here, we are discussing and we are thinking. So a body or umbrella from different dimensions and different expertise and specialty must come together to sit down and to think about the education and future of transformation of education in Africa general and in East Africa specifically. We are in East Africa, we take this initiative and we put our first steps toward building digital transportation in East Africa, a platform. So that platform will act as think tank and advisor under a big umbrella for planning, implementations, and monitoring of what we are doing for our Africa forward. So I think this is the start and the theme of this African University Day and week is a very sound. And I think this is our start. And we hope that we can get together and work together and think together and put down our needs in Africa. Because as it was mentioned there, we are having specific situations. We have different socioeconomic status, different capacity, and different community structures. So we need to teach our things by our hands and African, and to put down our solution as Africans and to engage with us all the key players, the government, policymakers, donors, organizations, and experts and thinkers. At the end, we will get through our agenda, African we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Faiza, for making those remarks. Let me quickly check whether something else came up via the chat from the participants.
Ma'am?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think, you know, the important points you raised is extremely important. At the end of the day, we need to put our heads together. This is what collaboration is all about, to share knowledge and to make sure that the systems, especially when we take it forward, because COVID is not going to last forever. And we have to look at post-COVID. However, since so much money has been implemented, why lose out the opportunity for digitalization and continuing with this? We learn from each other, we develop collaborations. There is so much institutions. We need to not look at it in isolation. We're here to join hands, foster collaborations so that we go into a more practical and more open approach and holistic approach towards digitalization African universities. COVID-19 has stripped so much from us, but it has not stripped the African way of Ubuntu, the way of sharing, the way of practicing, how shall we say, learning from each other. I always am amazed at my students' resilience, at the people I work with, at the various donors and stakeholders. There's never a crisis we cannot overcome. This is just one challenge, I always say. And it has not been easy for many of us here. Slowly, each institution, each country has a unique infrastructure or economic, or political, or whatever. But together we can rise as a united African front. And I'd like to say thank you so much for the positive responses. And I enjoyed what Dr. Faiza has highlighted, because we have to be active participants. We can no longer just stand on the sidelines. We need to participate. We need to grow this continent. We need to grow, because this is our land of birth. This is, you give back. And this is the most important. As educators, the one thing is to give back to society. We're not in it for the money, guys. Come on, we could do much better out there in industry. But as educators, we work tirelessly to bring light to our students, to how shall we say, to facilitate the learning and development and the promise of a better Africa and a better world. And our youth have to be driven in a positive, and their mindset needs to be, how shall we say, shown ways to adapt to a positive way. We have to sustain Africa. We have to sustain our education systems. And there is so much incredible potential in our continent. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think we've enjoyed all your submissions, all your presentations so far. And we would like to request all the presenters to share their presentations with us so that we can forward it to the participants. I would be calling Professor Faiza to wrap up the session and to give us the closing remark. For me, the key takeaway from this session relates to the fact that we really have to be practical and adopt a holistic approach towards digitalization and towards, trying to push digital transformation. And all the presenters, Professor Faiza, Dr. Naidu, and all the others have also stressed the need for stakeholders to work closely and to work together, because that is the only way that we can really move forward. As I was saying, that my key takeaway has been the fact that we really need to adopt a holistic approach and work together collaboratively as stakeholders in the higher education sector, together with all the other key stakeholders that we work with, because we don't operate, in an environment alone. We are part of a broader system. So all the presentations have stressed the need for collaboration. And I think we want to thank all our presenters and to thank Professor Osman, who is the coordinator of our East Africa Regional Office, for the good work that she and her team are doing so far, and for the good work that they've done in terms of making sure that this session was a successful one. We thank her so much. Professor, at this time, I would like to hand over to you so that you give us the closing remarks for the session. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Felicia, and thank you, AAU staff, for facilitating this work. I'd like to thank the presenter who get times and go in depth into our actual needs in African for Future. I thank all the presenters and contributors and the participants who takes time to attend with us this important event. And I hope that this will be a start point for us for future collaborations and for future think tank work in the East Africa. And we will be happy in East African Regional Office to collaborate, to assist, and to share with each other. And I think at the end, our main objective is to develop Africa by African. Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I would like to thank the AAU team who facilitate this work. And by this word, I declare that our seminar for today for East African session is now reaching at its end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for connecting from your various countries. I think I would just like to quickly announce tomorrow's session. Tomorrow happens to be the main Africa Universities Day, which is November 12th, the day where the day on which the Association of African Universities was founded. And so would like to encourage all of you to join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. GMT. We would have messages from the AAU president, we would have message from the AAU Secretary General, and there would be a high-level panel discussion which will be facilitated by us, the Association of Africa Universities. And we have panelists joining from all the regions of Africa. Would feature a panelist from Southern Africa, from Eastern Africa, from Northern Africa, from all the regions. So we are encouraging all of you to join us tomorrow at this high-level panel session. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to your participation tomorrow. Thank you so much.